Podcasting is more than just talking. It's listening. BSing with Bob Schmidt.
Small business owner, author, improver. I think the best part of the resume, though, is she's a friend of mine. Lisa Olson wrote the book, Laughs on Rye. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bob. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I certainly enjoy the other ones that I've caught of yours.
So being an improver, the biggest part of being an improver is the yes and. Is that the way you've lived life?
It certainly isn't a bad way to go. When you go with someone, the yes and is not just building on something they said, but it's also showing that you're listening, and that's a very respectful way to be. So whether it's to your parents, to your own children, coworkers, your teacher, yes and shows that I'm listening to you.
It's weird to interview somebody that you know, because a lot of times when you're interviewing somebody that you know, you anticipate that you know the way they're going to go. And sometimes you don't want to step on feet by asking the questions that you would normally ask. So I'm just going to pretend I don't know you, Lisa, which is probably something I should have done many years ago.
I get that a lot.
You probably would. First, I want to ask you, the first question is, your book says that it's written by Lisa David Olson.
Yes.
Is David really your middle name?
Not the one that was given to me when I was a little tiny, cute little baby, but it's the one I adopted for writing. If you look up Lisa Olson on the interwebs, there's going to be a lot of us.
Okay. So have you taken any guff for using the middle name David?
No, but like you, people have asked me that. That is something so surprising about this book, is being asked about my writer's name. I didn't expect that.
Is that the marketing part of you that decided that you wanted to go with something that's going to stand out?
Interestingly, I don't see myself as a marketer, but I certainly am, aren't I? That's awesome. I do believe that. I think it does make me stand out a little bit further. You know, I thought about doing initials with the last name or something like that. But again, it's all about that search engine and being standoutish from a common name.
When somebody thinks of Lisa Olson, what do you think they think of?
They think of, holy cow, was every woman born in the 60s adopting the last name Olson?
The book is called Laughs on Rye, and as I'm looking at the cover of the book, there's a piece of, it looks like wheat bread, not rye bread, but it looks like it's, cut, and it doesn't look like those pieces actually fit together as a puzzle, do they?
They do, and the title is spelled W-R-Y, so it's really a twist on the word rye. So Laughs on Rye is pretty much stating finding humor in non-humorous situations, and which refers back to my childhood. Regarding the cut of the bread, maybe you're hungry right now noticing that, but it actually does fit together, and that honestly is representing like a broken heart. Mm-hmm. But there's a little baby chicken on there that represents humor. So humor through the tears, I guess you could say.
Does the flour represent beauty, and then the butter knife represents tragedy?
Oh, my. Let's say that it does. That sounds pretty deep.
So
the flower was from my son, and that's a real flower, and it's just too pretty to leave out of the picture. And I took that picture with my cell phone on my kitchen table.
Really? And the butter knife just happened to be sitting on the table because somebody forgot to do the dishes?
Hey, when you've got 5 teenage boys, anything is possible on that kitchen table.
Right.
There's a lot of stories on our table. Let me just say that.
So the book is about life choices, right? Life is made of choices instead of excuses, and I full-heartedly agree with that. I don't think that you can be successful in life if you don't stand up and take personal responsibility for things in your life. Have you been able to do that your entire life, Lisa?
I'd say as a kid I could not, but you look at the angst-ridden teens, I certainly was one, but I did leave home when I was 17. Things were pretty bad with an alcoholic, abusive mom, physically abusive, and in a very scary way. We were beaten pretty bad at different times, my 3 siblings and I. I would say the youngest one was more protected from it, but the rest of us would be pulled out of the bed in the middle of the night. Who did this? Who did that? You're going to stand here until you tell me who did it, and one of us would just say, I did it, whatever it was. Things like that. So to this day, I have night frights, even though I'm old enough to know better. But when it comes to making choices instead of excuses, I chose humor as my path. I chose humor as my path to get through it. Where if I chose excuses, I'll tell you, some people do that. One of my siblings was pregnant and then married at 19. Another one moved far away. One of them has lots of issues and blames the whole wide world for everything. And it's, I'm just not close to the younger one because of that. it's just not the way to live. Just stand up, make your choices, get through it the best you can, and quit blaming. You can't move forward if you keep looking back.
Absolutely. Have you been able to make peace with your past life?
Yes, I would say some of the hardest conversations of my life were looking in my mother's eyes as she was aging and saying, how could you have done this? How could you have drank, and knowing that drinking was going to make you not see your own grandsons, my two sons? Or how could you have hit us and think that that was making everything good? And she did look at me and apologize at one point. The last, I think, 8 to 10 years of her life, she was sober because she almost died from alcoholism. I wrote about that story in the book. We were estranged at different times. We were together at different times. This certainly is not a book about slamming my mom. She had her own junk, and it trickled onto us. And I made peace with it because I forgave her. What if that's the best she could do? All I know is I wasn't going to raise my kids that way.
You know, you answered my next question. I was going to ask if you had a chance to forgive your mother.
I did. And like I say, luckily to her face. And, you know, she passed away in 2014, and real bittersweet. I wasn't with her at that time. I had to separate myself from her. That's the hard choices in life. Just because family is blood doesn't mean you owe them every phone call, everything. You don't. Not all families are tight. If you have one like that, awesome. Hug them, love them. But if you don't, find your own family. You know, most of my family are all my comedy people.
Right.
And they know me, and some of them know me better than my own family, that's for sure. But, yeah, I did forgive her in person and later in having to write her obituary. No one else could do it.
Were you able to put any humor, any Lisa Olson, into the obituary of your mother?
Interesting part is I remember the table I was sitting at in the coffee house I was sitting at as I was putting it together. I was quite in shock. I had not planned that was going to be what I was doing, but it just turned out to be what had to be done. And in seeking all the, you know, stats that you have to seek for someone's obituary, calling the schools and finding out the years that they had it, that they graduated, and things like that, I touch on the things that she did so well. She always brought food wherever she went. She loved to sew clothes, and she was knitting for people as gifts, even donating hats to the oncology department at a local hospital. And there's those things that, in telling her story in her obituary, brought those memories back to me. A really horrible thing in my life is I don't have those memories easy. Somebody has to remind me, or I have to see something or touch something to remember. So you could probably tell me who your 6th grade teacher was?
Yeah, Mr. Gray.
I don't have that.
Really?
Yeah,
so
that's good.
So you pushed all your childhood memories out of your head?
Not, when you shelf things like that, you can't choose what you get to have. So when you say, gosh, I was going to have a friend over, but mom had another episode or whatever, and now I don't get to have that. There's a story in there where I contemplated taking a handful of pills. Obviously I didn't. But those kinds of things, you can't pick and choose what great memories you're going to have. I have the kind of memories that are more like everybody remembers where they were when John Lennon was shot. Things like that. I can pick those big ones, but I don't have the little ones.
Do you think that the childhood that you had made you the smartass that you are?
Absolutely. The sarcasm to cover up how I'm feeling, the deflective humor so that you don't know I'm not well educated. Heck yeah, that's who I am. I was just never brave enough to talk about it before.
You know, Lisa, actually, reading in the book and seeing the articles that have been written on you locally, and then just listening to a couple of the interviews that you've had with people, I was shocked to find out that you didn't graduate from high school. And I would think that a lot of people that know you would probably feel that way as well. But, I found out later in life that there are a lot of people that are very successful, such as yourself, that didn't graduate from high school, that use that to propel them into the next, stratosphere of what they're doing.
And there again, it's about choices. I so regret, and, that is one thing that can nearly bring me to tears, is what if I had graduated in a regular way? And what if I had gone on to college and had the support of both parents to push and see me through? You see, that's another opposite I'm doing. I really pushed my kids through school and, empty your backpack. Let's look through your papers. Or nowadays, open up your computer. Let's see what's due. And I would ride that. And I'm sure that comes from me not having that support and not having those questions. Am I bitter about it? No, but it makes me a stronger parent in saying I am involved and I do want to know about your life. And it's hard to say, yeah, I didn't graduate, but I did go on to get my GED, and I did dabble in some college classes. I just have not gone on to get a degree. I've always worked, since I was 14, I've always worked at least 2 jobs. Just always have.
Now, is one of your jobs your business?
Yes, I currently work full-time as a city employee, but I also have a comedy troupe that I run, and through that I also have speaking gigs. And we do improv for corporate parties, private parties. We put on 2 full shows a year. One of them even runs 3 whole weekends. That's a lot of shows. And we write them all ourselves, direct them, do our own promotions, and just really are lucky to have a great following in town. And we try and keep everything corporate clean, and I'm super proud of that because that's a harder choice.
Oh, absolutely, because going dirty is always the easy choice. Let me ask this, because you're selling something that most of the people that I've talked with have a tangible good. You're selling an intangible. How difficult is it to sell the thought or an idea of something?
Well, hopefully they've seen or known about us, and nowadays with, clips on the internet, it's great because they can get a glimpse to see, yeah, I would like that for my party. When I tell people that we are interactive comedy and we'll get your whole room involved, that's appealing, because a lot of people will have pretend it's your wife's business party. You're not going to be in on the jokes that they have when they make some sort of a joke about still in accounting. You're not in that. But when we come in, we're asking the whole room for suggestions. Give me an idea where 2 people might meet. Give me an unlikely sporting event. Whoever calls that out, now the whole room heard it and we're all involved. So that's interactive comedy, and we're all enjoying it together. And the energy of a room, the give and take of the whole room, is pretty unmatched. And we don't need a lot of props. We barely come in with anything because it's just us playing with the room and the give and take of humor and ideas back and forth as we create sketches right there on the spot. It's darn fun.
What was the first time that you realized that you've got that gift?
Well, I do write about some of that. I was very young. One of my earliest memories was the first joke I ever told was in, let's say it was 3rd or 4th grade, and a boy and I, and see, here's where you'd remember the boy's name. We were hiding behind a hay bale, and we stand up, and I say, "Why is tennis such a noisy game?" And this little boy says, "Because everyone's raising a racket." And that's when I knew I had it. I knew I was going to be a star. Not really. Watching Carol Burnett growing up and loving the sketch comedy and kind of escaping, pretending that she was my mom. And, I knew back then that she grew up in an alcoholic home and she stayed with her grandma. And I always thought, what if I could live with Carol Burnett? Wouldn't that be awesome? And so I would always fantasize that way. My Barbies were such a good audience. I'm telling you, they craved my performances, my singing, my costume changes, like the Cher show, Sonny and Cher. So I knew that I loved escaping and doing that. I also had my own radio station in my bedroom, and I would take all the requests of anybody that walked by my bedroom. So I kind of had that going for me.
Growing up in an alcoholic family, Lisa, are you a drinker?
I do, but not to excess. Yeah. So it wasn't a give or take, it wasn't all or none in that situation. It was basically that after dark, that's when things would happen with Mom. So it was just a different type of drinking. She drank to excess in the evenings, but in the day, she was just your normal, everyday person you'd run into. Right. For myself, it doesn't affect me that way. If I would have more than one, I would probably get sick.
Okay. Do you ever worry about that, or have you ever worried about catching that disease?
No, but I do let my sons know early on. I let them know right away that alcoholism is on both sides of their family, their father's side and my side. And we've had a lot of talks about that, and just that you may think it's just fun to party, but you don't understand that there's something in your body that might just crave it on a level that's just not healthy and is just more than recreational. And I'm telling you, since they were young, that's what I used to tell them, just so they'd know and understand.
Was that hard for you to have that conversation with your boys?
No, not at all. I've been pretty transparent about things, not in an inappropriate way, but I'm not one of those mommies who talks in the third person. Now, what did mommy say, Bobby? It's just like, hey, you don't do that, remember?
Right. Being a fan of Carol Burnett, have you ever had the chance to meet her?
Oh, I write about that too. It was about 6 years ago or 7 years ago now, and my second husband took me to go see her in the cities, and what a fabulous event. And I was in the same room with her. It was amazing. It was in the cities, and I guess she's coming again this June to St. Paul. But when she walked out on that stage, I didn't expect this. Tears just started rolling down my eyes, and in my brain it was like, we're in the same room. We are breathing the same air. I can't believe, and it really struck me.
You had tears rolling down your eyes when Carol Burnett took the stage. Did you gain your composure?
Of course. I wasn't a wreck. I was just like, I couldn't believe it just hit me like that.
Lisa David Olson is my guest on the BSing with Bob podcast, a life made of choices instead of excuses, laughs on rye, an improver's memoir, finding humor through childhood abuse, failed marriages, and other hurdles. Let's talk other hurdles, because everybody that has a business, every entrepreneur has hurdles that they've gone over, through, or around. What are some of the other hurdles that Lisa David Olson has had?
I would say we've already covered one, which is my not finishing high school. And I would say another one was that with my first hubby, we were together since I was 17, and we lived together a long time, finally got married. And then we were married like 7 more years. And then we had children, and everything fell apart. And that was huge. That wasn't just a failed marriage. That was huge. That was a life change for me, because we're friends to this day, but the whole marriage thing didn't work when we had kids. So it's something we still don't really get, but we grew out of each other for sure when it came to parenting. It just didn't work. So that one was a big shock to me. But he made really good kids.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that it is because I hate to say this because we're friends, but because you weren't the center of attention any longer?
Well, I think, no, I think that's a really valid question, but it had a lot to do with our careers that we had going on. I mean, we weren't working same hours. We had a really split life in order to raise these boys. He was running his karate studio, which was really bizarre hours, like 3 p.m. till 9, sometimes 10 at night. And as soon as he'd get home, I was crashing because I was cleaning houses and doing radio. And so our hours were so extreme. I was always getting up at like 4:30 in the morning. So that way we didn't have to do daycare. Mm-hmm. But that didn't do much for our life.
Right. From what I've known you've always been, kind of a little off the wall, always going for the laugh. However, in your book, you've got pictures, selfies with strangers without smiling. Mm-hmm. Was that hard for you to do? Because most of the time, I mean, you can walk around with that, just your picture on the back of your book, not a smile. But when you're around people, you're infectious and you make people smile. Was it hard to get those types of photos from people that you knew and that you didn't know just because you're Lisa?
It was a very tough project that I put upon myself, and I called it my Project in Bravery. And it starts on page 64, and I call it Serious Selfies with Strangers. And it's very hard. The first part, even though I'm outgoing, is that just picture a person at the grocery store who might be looking at greeting cards, and to just approach them and say, hey, will you get in a picture with me? Think of that feeling. Next time you're in a public place, think of just approaching someone and saying, will you be in a picture with me? And then they say, okay, hopefully. And then you say, now I want you to look at my camera here, but we can't smile. And by now we're laughing because they've agreed, and it's kind of a joyous moment. Usually a picture is, let's smile. You can't laugh, so I'd have to take a few. You got it. Oh, you're smiling. Let's take this again. And in that section of the pictures you see between a lady in a funky hat that was at the farmer's market to a guitar-playing man in Chicago on the L train platform, not one person turned me down, and that was awesome.
Really?
But yeah, for me, awesome. That was hard. You walk up to somebody, you're interrupting their day, and oh my gosh, that means we're having an interaction in person. What? we're all supposed to be just on our phones all the time and ignore each other.
Lisa David Olson, everybody's got the aha moment in their life. And I just wonder, what was your aha moment?
A huge thing that you learn when you're an adult that you wish you knew as a kid was that it's harder to break up with a friend than a lover. People are mean, girls especially. And it comes a time where you have to actually uninvite them to be your friend anymore. And that's something that was a hurdle that once I decided, hey, we're not a match anymore. I've done that. And have you ever done that, Bob? Like, and I'm not talking about just unclicking them or blocking them on Facebook. I'm talking an actual conversation saying, our paths really don't align anymore. And I know that you're thinking this, and I'm just going to excuse you from my life at this time. I mean,
I've taken the wimpy way out. I just, I think it's called ghosting now, where you just don't talk to somebody anymore.
Right.
But I don't think I've ever sat down and said, you know what, Lisa, our friendship just isn't really working out. And yeah, I really don't see this working anymore ever. I've never had that conversation. How do you go about having that conversation with somebody?
With a partner, right?
Actually, I've always been the one that's been broken up with.
Oh, okay.
I've been married 28. I've been married 28 years, man. It's been it's been a long time, and
That's
I'm sure
crazy long.
I'm sure my crazy wife has probably wanted to have that conversation with me, but she's probably chicken to have it too. So here we are, 28 years in.
That is really an incredible milestone. I just got to give it to you. That is really incredible.
Well, it's more on her part than on me, but.
No, I know. Absolutely. But still, that is amazing. Good for you guys.
So why did you write a book?
I was working on a book a couple of years ago, and I've always wanted to have a piece of me on a shelf, I guess. It just like you go into even Barnes & Noble, and like I was telling you about Tom Roberts, who gave me a review on the back cover, and I went to Barnes & Noble, and I bought his mindfulness notebook, and I was like, that's a guy I know, and his book is on the shelf. I just thought I always have set high goals, and I just want to run for them. And this was one. And I had set up with a publisher a few years ago and gave them a few $100s and couldn't write. I just couldn't find my rhythm. And then they folded as a publisher and sent me half my money back and said, sorry, we're just not producing books anymore. Your project didn't come through in time. So, I break of thee, just as I was talking about how you break up with friends. They did it in a gentle manner. And then I started to write. So sometimes you take off the pressure and then you can kind of open up your brain and just go for it. And I gave a shout out to Boyce the mailman in the beginning of my book. And he's a man that I would see at the coffee house, and he comes to heart shows. And he is an actual mailman. And he would come by and say, I saw you on TV last night. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, oh, Carol Burnett was on. And then he said, what are you working on? I said, well, I'm trying to write a book. He goes, are you done with that book? So then every other week I'd see him at the coffee house. How's that book coming? Well, I finally got to meet him at my book signing. He showed up, and he didn't know he was in the book, but I thanked him, and we shared a little bit of tears and hugs. I said, you have no idea how encouraging those words were, because what I said to myself was, who wants to read my life? Who wants to read my stories? I don't have initials after my name. But I said, you asking me that made me think, well, somebody does want to hear my story. And he had no idea. That really touched him. That was a really nice moment. That was one of my better moments. Yeah, I don't know. Signing my book is kind of a neat thing. I got my purple pen, and I really do love signing my book. I love when somebody says, aren't you going to sign it? Because I don't offer, but because I feel like that's kind of pushy.
Right.
But if they say, I want you to sign it, oh, my purple pen comes out.
Can I just say that my book is signed in black ink? Like your
That's
heart?
Because I was running late in your parking lot. The thing that you'll never let me forget.
Well, I know. Now I have proof, too. Hey, Bob, let me see your book. Laughs on Rye by Lisa David Olson. Oh, look, it's written in black ink. She must have been late.
No, Bob. That's because you're so special. I chose the darkest ink so that you could read it even better than everybody else, because purple fades. And I wanted this to be special for you.
What's your most useless talent, Lisa?
I can drum, and I'm very physical with comedy, which has gotten me nowhere except bruises. But I love to be physical. I like to fall up things or plank on a stool kind of thing. That's not really gotten me famous nor rich, but I can do it.
What's the one question that you can ask anybody to find something out about them?
Oh, I like that. So I wonder what we have in common. What are your hobbies?
I like to drink beer, sit by the fire. I like to I like to interview people. I like to listen to music, and I'm a great napper.
See, now that's my useless talent. I can make you talk about you, just like you do.
Yeah.
People love to talk about themselves, don't they?
Absolutely, they do. What advice, Lisa, are you sick of hearing?
You should put that in your show. That's what people say all the time. They want to tell me about their aunt who broke her ankle because she was going to the stove, and then they touch you on the arm, they lean up by you, and they say, you should put that in your little show. I don't know what little show is, but you should put that in your little show, they say.
Whose advice do you always listen to?
Oh, so much. So much. The highest percentage is Todd Olson. A lot. And one of the best pieces of advice he gave me when I was struggling to write, and I've been a speaker for a number of years, and he really gave me a breakthrough sentence, and this is so crazy for me to admit. He said, you're not a motivational speaker. You are a storyteller and a sharer of humor. Just do that because that's what people want. You don't have to be out there teaching and motivating. You can share your stories and entertain, and they will learn through your stories. And that's how this book was shaped.
What will people learn from reading your book?
I'm hoping that people will learn that it's great to laugh at yourself. And I am pleased that I've been getting feedback where, and from newscasters to friends to relatives, I've gotten a few little notes randomly where the common theme has been, I laughed out loud. So if you want some entertainment and short snippets of stories that's not just about my childhood, because that's rarely touched on, just barely mentioned, and you're going to get some prank ideas out of there. I'll tell you that right now, Bucky.
What would a business person take out of your book?
A business person hopefully would take out of my book just the lessons that I put after each snippet. My little stories, I call them snippets. And it's possible that a business person might find something usable and relatable to ponder within their teams or their groups. This isn't a business teaching book by any means. I certainly do speak to businesses and groups and show them how improv works in the workplace. But this is also a relatable book just saying, hey, let's try something new. And I love to carbonate cubicles. So invite me to your office. Let's play. Hopefully they'll take some of that feel out of it and maybe want me to come and teach them some improv stuff. I love to do that. But a lot of it is based on fun, finding fun. And the main part of it is that it's affordable fun. I've got some great ideas in there of things I've done as an example, and I want people to run with them, twist them, do their own way. Write to me. Tell me about it. I'd love to hear those.
What's the best gift you've ever received?
Friendship. Real friendship.
The book is called A Life Made of Choices Instead of Excuses, Laughs on Rye, an improver's memoir. Lisa David Olson, the author of the book. Lisa, where do we find your book?
Just search it up on Amazon. There's an ebook. There's also the printed book. Just order it online. I would appreciate that. And a portion of the proceeds goes to the Family and Children's Center in the La Crosse, Wisconsin area.
The BSing with Bob Schmidt podcast is brought to you by Orange Computer. Find them online at orangecomputerlax.com.
This has been another podcastforhire.com production.